Thank you all for coming here to bear witness to Mr. Noone's incredible influence in our lives and our community. We all lost a friend, a mentor, a role model, a teacher, a colleague, an advisor, and our favorite comedian. Today, we will be hearing from teachers, a student, a former student, about the ways in which Mr. Noone touched our lives and how we can honor him moving forward into the years to come. For those of you who may not know, I am Miss Edsel. I started here at Melrose the same year as Mr. Noone, and we served as student government advisors and history teachers together. Quickly, he rose to be a teacher I admired and attempted to emulate, poorly, and ultimately, he became a friend. We are all here today in mourning, yes, but also to honor him by reminding ourselves of how he transformed our school and community. To remain unchanged by his presence would be a mistake, but rather, we should seek to learn from the greatest gifts Mr. Noone imparted to this community. Each of these gifts is a piece of himself that he shared so that we can finish the work he so ardently began, because the truth is, his work is far from done. These gifts are set firmly as lessons in my heart, as I hope they are in yours. They are the lessons he taught us beyond profit margins in the War of 1812. If you were listening carefully enough, he taught you how to create a meaningful life. Mr. Noone showed us how to fight the tide of apathy and truly care about what we choose to do. Mr. Noone stayed up far later than any teacher I know to create the perfect lesson, to dig into his students' work and respond to student concerns. He cared deeply. He cared about whether his students fully understood how women contributed to colonial America. He cared about his students' sports stats, and he cared about the well-being of each and every one of you. Mr. Noone exemplified the pursuit of excellence in the absence of glory. He remained humbly unaware of his stellar success as a teacher, yet sought excellence in every endeavor. He did not expect nor chase after fleeting accolades or recognition, but poured himself into the daily grind because he truly believed that each and every student was worth his very best. And this leads to the most important gift he gave us. Mr. Noone reminded us that people are the most important resource. So invest in relationships, reach out to people who are hurting, fight for the underdog, and eat pizza with people you love on Fridays. I urge us all to remember these gifts. Hold them close to you, but also give freely to others. Each time you shun apathy and care about something important, Mr. Noone's work is continued. The moments in which we perform our best without an audience, Mr. Noone is still plugging away at his tasks. And when you invest time and energy into the people around you, Mr. Noone's gifts live on in perpetuity. Thank you, Mr. Noone, for gifting us these lessons. We will continue your good work.
It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. I have no idea who said this, and until recently, I had no idea what it meant. Like the difference between demand and quantity demanded, though, Mr. Noone helped me understand. When he came back from paternity leave my sophomore year, it took all of 2 minutes for Mr. Noone to prove that he was just about the proudest father in the entire world, and after that, we got to work. That year in global leadership, we talked about how to measure a country's well-being, women's rights and feminism, climate change, food justice, and microlending. It wasn't the kind of empty, do it to cover the material type of talk that you get in a lot of classes. It was the talk about it because it matters type. Mr. Noone made you care about what was going on in the world. All of the problems, all of the small victories, all of the people. I got a glimpse of the kind of economics teacher Mr. Noone was even before junior year started. It should have come as no surprise when he left comments and words of encouragement on my summer assignments for his class in the middle of July. I have no idea how he did it, but he made a 15-year-old high school student on vacation want to do her summer work. I returned to school in the fall, this time excited that my class with Mr. Noone would meet every day instead of every other. As the weeks went on, I walked through the halls every day waiting to get to econ to hear what song was playing. Walking in Memphis meant it was a great day, waiting for the class that I knew would always be a good one. Few were the days when I came home from school without a story about something I learned or something funny or moving that Mr. Noone said. Mr. Noone was an econ wizard, a confidant, a supporter of the arts, a devoted Friday night pizza eater, a never-ending supply of witty jokes, a microlender, a nonfiction book fanatic, especially for ones about U.S. history, an advocate, a self-proclaimed dessert aficionado, a music connoisseur, a Twitter master, a sports enthusiast, the epitome of a Renaissance man, a paragon of dedication, a live and in-person good luck note, everybody's most reliable pep talk and biggest supporter, a well of kindness and compassion. We sum this all up with teacher or friend, but those words carry more weight when they're about Mr. Noone, because he was the best teacher and the best friend. With Mr. Noone as my teacher, it was easy to get caught up in the great people and great movements he introduced me to. Frederick Douglass and abolitionism, Norman Borlaug and the Green Revolution, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and feminism, Paul Farmer and medicine. While I do think all of those people have done admirable things, from where I stand, they have absolutely nothing on Mr. Noone. I'm not sure what his movement should be called, but one quote that comes to mind when I think of him and what he has given to us is this one: "Do small things with great love." Having known Mr. Noone, I know that you do not have to change the course of history or transform countries to make a profound difference in the lives of others. He showed me this, whether it was through staying after school to answer questions about insulin prices or to talk about how much we admired Paul Farmer. Whether it was in class when he told you, "You got this," before a quiz, or when he stood with you and your friends in solidarity as you screamed about the pink tax, or when he funded a microloan for a man named Apollo from Uganda who couldn't afford to send his young sons to school. Whether you point to the copy of A Precious Human Life that he gave you at the end of the year, or to one of the many emails he sent you that you hold on to forever. Whether it was any one of these or any of the other wonderful things he did, he showed us how to help somebody develop their passions, how to lift up the people around you, how to make somebody feel special, how to wholeheartedly believe in someone, and above all else, how to give. Thank you, Mr. Noone, for showing us the very best way a person can be, for believing in us always, and for being our teacher.
Thank you for coming. A poem widely attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson and based on work by Bessie Anderson Stanley defines success in this way: to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a better place, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know that one life has breathed easier because you lived here, this is to have succeeded. By this definition, Michael Noone was one of the most wildly successful people I have ever had the privilege of knowing. Mike's sharp wit and appreciation for the absurdity in life are the stuff of legend. In meetings, Mike was known to deliver a devastatingly funny line without cracking a smile that often left people, usually me, dissolved in laughter while he just smirked and acted like nothing happened. He was widely respected for his scholarship and academic achievement here at Melrose High School, at Salem State, where he earned his master's degree, as well as at Amherst College and St. John's Prep. Mike's humanity, huge heart, and humor earned him the affection of his son, Michael Stephen, his nieces, and his many students here at Melrose High. Through his global leadership class, Mike worked tirelessly to foster commitment and drive among his students to cultivate meaningful contributions to improving the social condition for our global community. It was one of his greatest professional joys, and his students reaped the benefits of Mike's efforts to expose them to a larger world and a broader perspective. I wish he knew how many people, including myself, were enabled to breathe easier by his mere presence. Boston Bruins legend Bobby Orr once said, "You never know how a single interaction with a person might affect their life, so you must constantly try to be at your best." Mike came to work every day feeling he owed his students his very best. This was his way of changing the world, one person at a time. He never discounted a kid, never gave up on a kid, and was willing to work alongside every single one of his students to reach their highest potential. He was the consummate educator and example for the students of Melrose High School. Mike Noone was also possessed with a humility that prevented many people from recognizing the depths of his talents. He strove every day to be the best, not for himself or for personal recognition, but for those to whom he felt he owed his best, his students, his colleagues, and his family. If you've ever seen Mr. Noone in the classroom, you would think he'd been teaching all his life. Many people don't know that he was relatively new to the profession. About 10 years ago, he chose to change the direction of his career and go back to school to become an educator. For those of you that have never done it, going back to school once you've been out a while and you're older than everyone else is a scary thing. It's a risk. Mike knew teaching was his dream. He knew in his soul that this was one of the ways he wanted to leave his mark in this world. So he took the risk. Herb Brooks, coach of the United States 1980 Olympic hockey team, said, "Risk something or forever sit with your dreams." Mike Noone didn't sit with his dreams. He lived them, and we are all the better for it. I'd like to close with two questions. The first of these asks, what would Mr. Noone want us to do now? If Mike was ever disappointed in people, it was never over what they could or could not do. It was always about what they chose not to do. This was true for adults as well as students. What frustrated Mr. Noone was when he saw apathy, laziness, and complacency in those around him. So moving forward, how can we honor him in our own lives? I would offer you these suggestions. Lean into your life. Try. Care. Take initiative. Actively work to improve yourself and your world. Mike Noone did this every day. We owe it to him to pick up where he left off. We can honor him best by engaging in life and learning every day. Lastly, I'd like to look at what we can do to help ourselves move forward in Mr. Noone's absence. How can we transform this loss? Once again, I turn to Mike for the answer, and that answer is gratitude. Ralph Waldo Emerson offered insight into the role of gratitude in our lives. He said, "Cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you, and to give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude." Emerson understood that including all things in our gratitude means including the loss as well. I would suggest that we all should express our gratitude for the opportunity to know Michael Noone. The time we had with him was too short, there is no doubt of that, but the gifts were enormous. As sad, angry, and disappointed as I have felt in the wake of Mr. Noone's death, gratitude has led me to find that I prefer the loss to the alternative. An alternative that meant I never got to know Mike at all. I am grateful that I had the privilege to know him. Practicing gratitude at a time when many of us don't feel very grateful can be a challenge at first. But once you get going, it gets easier. Allow me to demonstrate. Thank you, Michael, for always making me want to work harder and be a better person. Thank you for sharing your wonder and sheer joy that came in the form of the birth and growth of Michael Stephen. Thank you for showing me that one can always be kind in every situation. Thank you for making me laugh at times when I truly didn't think it was possible. Thank you for making me laugh when it was completely inappropriate and therefore more fun. Thank you for introducing me to Coffee Time Donuts in Salem. Thank you for agreeing with me that the NHL referees had it in for the Bruins in last season's playoffs. Thank you for analyzing all of the Bruins and Melrose High School hockey games with me until we figured out which adjustments would have made every game ours. Thank you for keeping me company through every hockey, tennis, and soccer match we watched and texted through. And most of all, thank you for being a fierce friend who always had my back no matter what, even when we both knew I was probably wrong. The act of giving thanks for knowing Mike has allowed the negativity to lessen and the joy of Mike Noone's life and influence to overtake the sadness. I hope it will work for you as well. As we begin this new school year, I challenge all of us to keep Mr. Noone's life in our hearts and minds by remembering the following: that we can always improve someone else's day through just one positive interaction, that taking big risks often results in even greater rewards, that giving 100% effort in all our endeavors and diving into life is vital to success, and finally, that expressing gratitude for our experiences rewards us by transforming even devastating events into gifts that allow us to grow and flourish.
Exactly 1 year ago today, I was sitting in a beautiful Ocean View restaurant with Mr. Noone and baby Michael. It was my college farewell lunch, and Mr. Noone had wanted to say goodbye for one last time. We talked, laughed, shared stories, and watched Michael Stephen devour his applesauce. By the end, we decided that this gathering would become an annual tradition. I still struggle to comprehend that today, exactly 1 year later, I'm here, a place we all never imagined being so soon. Today, we gather to mourn the loss of one of the greatest people we've ever had the privilege of knowing. Mr. Noone was a constant beacon of light, of love, and inspiration to the Melrose community. Though he only spent 6 years at Melrose High, his impact on the school and its students stretched far beyond his time and will continue to guide MHS for years and years to come. I was lucky enough to have Mr. Noone as a teacher for 2 years, my sophomore year for Global Leadership and my junior year for AP Economics. Through these 2 courses, he literally changed my life. Not only did he introduce me to my passions of economics and politics, the 2 subjects in which I major in at Tufts, but he taught me the importance of standing up for what I believe in, being an advocate, and applying my skills to help the common good. Through his engaging and dynamic lectures, Mr. Noone single-handedly shaped my career path and molded my moral beliefs into what they are today. Though I learned a wealth of knowledge in my years in global leadership and economics, it's the wisdom Mr. Noone shares outside of the classroom that will stick with me forever. He taught me that a little music can fix any bad mood. The number of times students caught him jamming out to the Hamilton soundtrack in his classroom is more than I can count. Mr. Noone also taught me to find the joy in pretty much everything. For example, one of his proudest classroom wall decorations was simply a cardboard wrapping to a notepad he used in class. Though anyone else would have thrown away the notepad's packaging, Mr. Noone thought the image of the man enthusiastically pointing to a blank notepad was hilarious, so he hung it up to make him smile every day. He showed me the importance that a text or an email can have. Mr. Noone was known for going out of his way to send good luck or break a leg emails to each one of his students before a big game or performance. I can't speak for everyone, but I know that constantly receiving those emails and texts meant the world to me, and I still cherish those today. He taught me the importance of being a family person. I still remember the first time he told me the story of how he met Mrs. Noone and the moment he told our AP Econ class that he was having a son. Lastly, as many of us have said, Mr. Noone taught us the importance of Pizza Friday. There was never a Friday where he forgot to mention that it was Pizza Friday, and even if we didn't have class, he would make sure to send out an email to remind us to enjoy that night. To all of you here today, grappling with this type of devastating loss seems close to impossible. However, sharing stories, random and silly as they may be, will help to keep Mr. Noone's spirit and legacy alive. To you, Mr. Noone, thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for always supporting me and believing in me. We'll all never forget you.
When you walk through a storm, keep your chin up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire, that was beautiful. Also, thank you for those of you who shared your words with us today. Thank you all for being here with us today, especially to his family and friends who have joined us today in our school community. At this time, we'll have a moment of silence for Michael Noone. Thank you. It was an honor to work with Mike Noone. He treated his students and his colleagues with kindness, respect, and love. I hope that we can keep him in mind when we interact with each other this coming year and in all of our futures. It's going to take many of us to attempt to fill his shoes. In closing, I'll read a quote that I recently read on his wall. It's by Brian H. McGill. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. I think we can all agree that he lived by that. Some of our students have already begun to write letters that include a memory or a story about Mr. Noone in hopes of being able to share them with his son, Michael Stevens, someday. For those of you who would like to do that, those letters could be given or sent to Miss Edsel, who will make sure they get to Mrs. Noone. That concludes our memorial this afternoon. Thank you all, and keep each other well.